Hey yo, what's poppin', man? I'm back. We're doing a summary video. Again, back to back over here. So, summary video is basically going to be covering this sell, a buy from within here, a further sell, another buy in here, and this sell. So let's start. First thing you need to understand, monthly bullish, weekly bullish. We need to understand that. Then we need to understand why we're taking this sell. The first reason for this is because we have a, God's sakes, bro. Okay, it's because we have a weekly resistance. Now, during the time of this happening, we never actually had a weekly bearish storyline. Now we have a reason to believe that we have a weekly bearish storyline. But during this time, we never had that. We just had a buy, sell candle, and we were on this third week right here. Let's say this is the first week. Let's say this is the second week. We're on this third week. So we have something like this. Okay, we just have a buy, sell resistance. Now, the reason why this weekly resistance is significant is because we have ourselves a monthly bullish storyline, and in a monthly bullish storyline we have the weekly time frame that is of significance for entries as well as for obstacles meaning areas to be aware of. So this would be an obstacle, an area to be aware of. This is a weekly resistance in a monthly bullish storyline. So in this weekly resistance, we can take a high risk trade by going weekly and then figuring out, so this is the weekly line, figuring out what daily we can pursue. So if you go back to the weekly and make a line over here so we can differentiate the weekly from the daily, right? So this is the weekly. Okay, that's the weekly. We head to the daily. Now, this is the weekly line. What daily is there? So let's assume that right now we're right here. What daily is there? This daily is not within the weekly. We need something to be refined. So from weekly, these two are the closest to daily refinements. So go ahead and mark that out. This is an open close that is together with the engulfing candle, the bearish engulfing candle, which is very significant and is a very high quality form of open close candle. If we just have an open close candle that's in the middle of nowhere, that's still fine, but it's not as good as an open close candle that is together with an engulfing candle. Okay, we can see multiple examples of this. You know, we have an open close together with a bullish engulfing. There's just so many examples of this going on. Okay, okay, over here is our daily. So in our daily, what you would do for a high risk trade, you'd simply go daily and then H4, H1 and look for MTF opportunities. So daily, hit to the H1, hit to the H4. And over here we have ourselves a fresh H4. Again, I did not ignore that we have other H4 left shoulders, open close, etc. It's just that these are the ones that are a cluster close together. Okay, this horizontal line, this line right here is the weekly, horizontal line is the daily, start of the rectangle is the H4, and then you simply go to the H1 to see whether you can multi-time frame it even further. And you can see that we indeed can multi-time frame this even further. So what I did just there is to say that this is a H1, this open close, right? Open close that's been broken. It's a flip zone, which is MTF with the H4 and MTF with the daily. And this top zone is basically saying this is the upper limit, you could say. You can increase the upper limit to be the left shoulder, but this is just what I did during the time of trading. Okay, so during the time of trading, this is what I did. And yeah, okay. So these are the two main areas right here. And then price hit it in, and I took the sell. Okay, now if you wanted to add a confluence, you can easily add this trendline confluence right here. I'm not sure whether this actually tapped. Well, it did. It's not a very clear trendline confluence, but it is one nonetheless. Meaning if you were to get something like this, boom, right there, right, you can see how we have the buy, sell. So that's your first point. Trend lines need 2 touches, and then the third is your entry, right? So first touch, second touch would be buy, sell here. The reason why it's a bend on the line chart is because it's an open close. No problem, right? And that would be your confluence basically for the zone. Remember, your trend line is usually the last thing that you look at, but it's still significant. As I said, it's still something that can add some relevance or confluence to your trade. So anyway, that's the reason for the first entry. Then what I noticed was very simple. From this first entry, we actually started a bearish storyline on the daily. So the reason why we started a bearish storyline on the daily is because we had ourselves this daily zone. So the first entry was actually an anticipation trade. The meaning of an anticipation trade is basically when I took this sell, it is a sell from this daily area in anticipation that hopefully we have ourselves a daily reject daily and a daily bearish storyline start from there. So that's exactly what happened. When that day ended, this was a Monday. As you can see down here, we have the days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. On Monday, we had ourselves a daily reject daily, and a H4 bearish breakout. You can see the bearish breakout right here. Boom. That's the first area of the breakout. Again, there are broker discrepancies, but if you want to look at the last sell buy before we touched, that's the one you want to see break out, and that's exactly what happened. So now we know that we have ourselves a daily bearish storyline. Okay, we know that we have ourselves a daily bearish storyline, and so yeah, from this daily bearish storyline, immediately you can tell these are the two areas that you want to be paying attention to. Again, I'm going to be covering this trade, not what came before that. If you guys want to see a full in detail breakdown, you guys want to watch the non-summarized video, which is basically the video right before this one, and you will see a full breakdown of all the opportunities. So anyway, sell from over here. Now, I noticed that, as I said, daily bearish storyline, but also we had tapped into this daily support. See this daily support, sell, buy, that's a support. Price missed it there, and price on Monday came down and tapped into this daily support. We also tapped into the daily resistance. However, the difference is that if we were to switch to H4, although the daily did reject from this daily resistance and also rejected off of the daily support, the daily resistance actually had a daily bearish storyline start from it. How do I know that? Because of the H4 bearish breakout. But notice how, even once this day closed as a daily rejection of the support, we never had a H4 bullish breakout. And since we never had a H4 bullish breakout, how dare we say the daily actually started a bullish storyline from here? It didn't. There's no H4 bullish breakout. Okay, but we can dare to say that this daily resistance actually caused a daily bearish storyline to start, simply because we had ourselves a H4 bearish breakout, validating the daily bearish storyline. All right, so that was the sell. Now I bought from right here as well. Why? Why did I buy from right here, even though I just said this is not a daily bullish storyline, but rather there is a daily bearish? So shouldn't I just be focusing on the sells here? Well, you could, but here's an opportunity for us to buy, and I'll tell you why. One of the setups we have, for example, on the daily would be daily reject daily support, and then H4 does a bullish breakout. And so we can say, oh, okay, daily's in bullish storyline, and we can buy from the subsequent H4s and from the subsequent daily supports, because we know daily is a bullish storyline. But the second type of setup is when we don't have a storyline confirmed, but it's still a setup. It's a medium risk setup, and that medium risk setup is like this: daily reject daily, H4 new support. Or if it's in a sell case, we would have daily reject daily resistance and then H4 new resistance. So in this case, what do we have? We have this black line being the black horizontal line being the daily, right? We have ourselves a daily reject daily. That was on Monday. Once Monday closes a rejection, we checked Monday's price action on Tuesday, and we saw, hey, we have ourselves a new support created. See, sell, buy, new support. And so we can place ourselves a limit right there. Now, when we have a long wick, we should always understand that inside this long wick, see, we're on H4, we're not on H1. When we're on H4 and we see this long wick, we can always assume that there's probably some hidden H1s in here that we should be aware of. Again, as I said, if you wanted a more in-depth breakdown of all the different possibilities, watch the previous video. But what I did in this case to catch this buy, it was actually a news trade. What I did in this case was very simple. Price hit it into this H4, and this H4 was multi-time framed with a H1. Right here. Okay, this is the H1 and multi-time frame with the H4, right? And the reason we're looking at that is because we had a daily reject daily that formed the H4 multi-time frame with the H1, and we can look for an entry right here. If there are some trend lines that you could use, then go ahead and use those. I'm not sure if there were any, but if there are, you can definitely go ahead and check those out for sure. So that was the reason for this entry. Now, once we entered into that, we still cannot let go of the fact that this right here, these two are the danger areas in the sense that we should be relying on these, that we should be saying that, okay, if there's anything that's going to hold right now, it's probably going to hold from right here. I can't place too much trust on this. The reason I can't place too much trust on this is because we don't have a daily bullish storyline, but we do have a daily bearish storyline. Okay, and this is the area that we're going to be paying attention to. So what I did was made myself my zone on the H4, hit to the H1, and see whether we could refine anything from there. So we couldn't really refine anything from here. There was nothing fresh on the H1. This H1 is pretty low. It's still fine. You could still use this as a H1 multi-time frame reason for sure, but it's still pretty low. And as I said, there's nothing wrong if you use this. It's just we would ideally like for an MTF to be on the H4 or above it. same with every time frame. Here there's nothing on the H1. They've all been tested. Buy, sell, tested, right? Sell, buy, break, been tested. Open, close, been tested, but there is a last resort. I've explained countless times in the previous video what a last resort is. A last resort basically means that, so we understand that these are the two entry opportunities that the current daily storyline has given us, right? So what do I mean by the current daily storyline? The current daily storyline, as in the moment of me looking at this chart, is daily rejected this daily, H4 bearish breakout. You guys follow? These are the two entry opportunities that we have, that we're dealing with right now. If price completely blasts through this area, doesn't mean that we're in a daily bullish storyline, but it does mean that these two entry opportunities are no longer valid, obviously, because they've been broken through. So when we're faced in a situation like this, we can take the uppermost resistance, regardless of whether it's been tested multiple times, it doesn't matter. That's called a last resort. Okay, so this would have been your first entry opportunity down in here. You would not have been stopped out if you had a 32 pip stop loss, and this would have been a second entry opportunity right here. You definitely wouldn't have been stopped out over here. Okay, so one more time, what's this H4? This H4 is basically the buy sell, and you refine that to a H1. You have your last resort, but nothing else really, so you can split your risk. So now we have already broken down, the sell, broken down the reason for this buy, and we've broken down the reason for the sell, and I've also given you guys a reason as to why I would think that this sell would probably last longer. So let me clear the charts. I hope you guys have understood that now. Next thing we need to understand is that, as I said, during the time of me viewing the charts, we were still in a weekly bullish. Can we understand that? We're still in the weekly bullish because we hadn't done any weekly reject, weekly daily bearish breakout. We haven't done any of that just yet. So we're still in a weekly bullish. Because we're in a weekly bullish and a monthly bullish, especially because we're in a monthly bullish, I would have to pay attention to the weeklies. Price made its way into this weekly again. Price made its way into this weekly, which is very important, as I said, because this weekly is important. Why? Because we're in a monthly bullish. We can multi-time frame it with a daily, and the reason I would multi-time frame it with a daily is because if I wanted to place a trade based on a weekly bullish storyline, starting from here, what do I need? I would need a weekly reject weekly. That's step one, so I need to wait for a whole 5 days to be over. Then I need to wait for a daily bullish breakout. God knows how long that could take. It could take as short as it wants to be. It could be incredibly long, right? For example, over here we have a weekly reject weekly, but until now we still don't have a daily bullish breakout, right? A daily bullish breakout that we want to look for would be over here for this daily to be broken out, but we don't have that yet. So that's what I mean. So in case if I'm an intraday trader, I want to take trades a little bit quicker. So in this weekly, we have ourselves a daily. So that means what? Daily MTF weekly. Okay, so daily MTF weekly allows us to take trades with a higher frequency. Very simple. It allows us to take trades with a higher frequency. Weekly daily MTF. Inside this daily, we can simply refine. Again, as I said, there are broker discrepancies. I've talked about this in my previous video. In my broker, Hot Forex, IC Markets, maybe a couple others, there would not be an open close. There would actually be a proper traditional SNR. It was a buy sell candle, meaning an SBR that actually presented itself over here. But regardless, this is a H4 that is MTF'd with a daily, that is MTF'd with a weekly. So anyway, back to the H4. H4, refine it to the H1. You know, we always have to refine it to the H1 just to see what we're dealing with, right? And we can see that we indeed have ourselves a H4 left shoulder, H1 left shoulder, H1 open close, and these are all MTF together. And as you know, when there's a bunch of zones together, we should probably pay attention to that one, right? Not always the case, but we should probably pay attention to that one. Okay, price taps in, just to show you guys I'm not lying. Price does indeed tap in right there. You can find some trend lines. If there are any, you can definitely find some. And yeah, play it just like that. Okay, so that would have been your entry for down here. And the reason why you would not be, you know, thinking that this would last a very long time is simply because we never actually had, this is a daily zone, right, that we're playing off of, and we're playing an intra, so we're not really waiting for the weekly reject weekly daily bullish breakout. This is a daily zone, so if we enter over here and we wanted to hold, we would say, okay, let's wait for a daily reject daily and H4 bullish breakout. Then we can hold this. But if you're an intraday trader, you're entering right here. This is a high risk trade. This is just a touch trade. You just like that, no storyline, nothing. And that's fine for an intra player. You're gonna take your profits at 50 pips. Your break even at 50 pips, 50 to 70 pips. And then you're gonna take all your profits for the day because you're an intraday trader, right? At 100 pips. Okay, but guess what happened right as this day closed? So this is a Wednesday. When this day closed on Wednesday, guess what happened? Don't you agree that we have ourselves a daily reject daily? Yes, we do. Go ahead and check the H4. Guess what was created? Yes, sure, there's no H4 breakout, but there is a H4 new support. Now, remember what I told you guys in the previous video and what I told you guys earlier as well. When you have a H4 support but a huge wick, that probably means that there are a bunch of hidden H1s in here, and price may not just tap and go. It may do a little bit of a drawdown, right? Floating, they call it. So from the H4, we go to the H1 and let's see what we can find. So over here, as you can see, I don't really favor open closes that are in the middle of nowhere. So what I did in that moment was I just refined it, because I know I can't be taking a buy over here, another buy from here, another buy from here, another buy from here. I want to limit my risk, so I picked these two zones. This is exactly what I did during that day, and as you can see, this is my intra opportunity. Now I explained to you why this is only intra, even though we're coming from weekly. Why is this just an intra? Why wouldn't I trust this to hold super long? It may hold super long, but why don't I trust it to do so? Very simple. Explain that in a bit. As you can see, you can take your profits at 50 pips, 70 pips, 50 pips break even, 70 pips break even, and then take your profits for the day. Price actually goes up to 140 pips, but take your profits for the day as an intraday trader at 100 pips. Okay? Hope you guys understood this trade right here. Now let's go back to the daily and explain to you guys why I would not expect this to last super long. As I said, it could, but why I wouldn't expect it to do so. We had ourselves a daily reject daily. There is no daily bullish storyline that started from this. Now, if price wanted to swing from here, what we need, first of all, is not even about the daily. If price wanted to swing from this weekly, we need a weekly bullish storyline to start. If price wanted to swing from here, we need to have weekly reject weekly, daily bullish breakout. There was no daily bullish breakout. At that moment in time, there hadn't been a weekly reject weekly. So how can I expect it to hold? Okay, there's no daily bullish storyline. On my broker, as I said, there are broker discrepancies. On my broker, it actually showed that there was a breakout right here. It showed that there was a breakout. On Awanda, it's just showing wicks, but on my broker, it showed that there was a breakout. How would I deal with this situation? Very simple. Let's assume that there was a breakout here. Okay, so we're gonna assume that by putting a little box, and let's just color that box in, because on some brokers there was actually a breakout. On my broker, there was definitely a breakout, and a lot of people were texting me being confused, saying, Avi, how do you deal with this? Because on my broker there was a breakout, but on Awanda there wasn't. Let me tell you exactly how, and I still never got blindsided. Let's assume there was a breakout, meaning what? There's a daily bullish storyline playing from here. Guess where we went into, my friends? Where did we go? Buy, sell. Let's look at it right there. Buy, sell. That is a daily resistance. And the daily never broke that out. If the daily broke that out, oh my, that's a freaking weekly bullish storyline that started. But it didn't do that on any of the brokers. H4 broke out on my broker, but the daily didn't. It did a daily reject daily. Look at this. This is the one I'm talking about right here. Buy, sell, daily resistance, fresh. And then this is what? Tuesday, Wednesday, created that daily resistance. And on Thursday, we did what? Daily reject daily. Correct? So on Friday, I'm looking at Thursday and I'm going, what did that daily reject daily actually do? And we see that what it had done is done a H4 bearish breakout, which means what? This is a daily bearish storyline that started, but this daily bearish storyline that started is after the daily bullish storyline started, meaning we have to forget about that daily bullish storyline, and we now have to rely on the daily bearish, which means daily is bearish storyline, and it overrides the previous daily bullish. So we forget about daily bullish. We're saying now daily is bearish. Why? Because it happened after the daily bullish. Daily was bullish, and then daily reject daily and H4 bearish breakout. Daily is no longer bullish anymore. A new storyline started, my friends. This is known as flexibility. Again, I've talked a lot about this in my previous video. This is we're in a range. When we're in a range, we have storylines starting and ending in 2 days notice. Believe that. When we're in a range, we have storylines starting and ending in 2-3 days notice. Who knows? Maybe even 1 day's notice. Okay? And so, yes, that was what happened. Now, I didn't actually take the sell from here. If I did, I would have been stopped out anyway because price actually would have wicked me out. But I took this buy, and the reason for this buy, even though we aren't in a bullish storyline, the reason for this buy, as I said, is very simple. Daily reject daily, H4 new support, H4 new support refined to H1. That's the reason I took the buy. Too easy, too simple. Then, what happened next was even more fun, and I didn't take this trade, but it was very fun regardless. Look, sell, buy, daily new support. Go and mark that up. Okay? Now you need to understand, during this time, a new week had started. See how we went from Friday to Monday? A new week had started. So when a new week starts, we go and take a look at what the previous week has done. Now, on the previous week, buy, sell, resistance, price comes up and taps into the resistance, and it closes as a weekly reject weekly. So we go ahead and we take a look at the daily, because weekly reject weekly, ooh, maybe there's a daily bearish breakout. And if there's a daily bearish breakout, that means we have ourselves a weekly bearish storyline. And yes, there is indeed a daily bearish breakout, which means we're now in a weekly bearish storyline. Okay, so since we're in a weekly bearish storyline, what does that mean? There is no monthly bearish, but there is a weekly bearish. So what does that mean? That means your entries are going to be from a daily. That also means that your that means that your obstacles are going to be on a daily as well. Now, a daily obstacle now look, we're in weekly bearish storyline. Weekly bearish storyline means obstacle is what? Daily support. What is this? Sell by, daily support. That's your obstacle. So in here, daily, go to H4. This is your daily. Go to your H4. That's your refinement right there. You see, this has already been tested. Okay, we forget about this one, no problem. Here we go. 25 pip drawdown, no problem. But I hope you understood that one. Daily bullish, daily support is going to be the obstacle to your weekly bearish storyline. Now, very simple. This is just an obstacle, guys. So daily, reject daily, H4, bullish breakout here. See, we break out, right, guys? Follow, we break out, which means what? At the moment, current thing is what, guys? What's the current thing? Daily bullish, but weekly bearish. So means what? Am I right? Weekly bearish. So look for sells from daily resistance. An obstacle, of course. Obstacle is daily, right? But we're already playing from the obstacle. Okay, cool. We're looking look for a sell in here. And the sell that I actually took was up here. So what is this? Let's go and make them like this. Let me just get rid of this so we have a cleaner chart. Okay, this was the, right? So look, weekly, rejected the weekly, daily resistance. First one was over here. Second one up here. You can see how we didn't close as a daily reject daily here, right? Sell buy is a support, breaks, become resistance. We didn't actually reject. See how price breaks, like not breaks, but it goes up and it disrespects it. Over here's the next one, buy, sell, fresh resistance. Daily to H4, excuse me, daily to H4. Over here we have ourselves a H4 resistance. We have ourselves a H4 open close. What I paid attention to was right here. Then we go to H1 to see what's up. In the H1, we have ourselves a H1 open close, MTF with a H4 open close, MTF with this black line daily, and we also have another entry opportunity at the last resort, or since we have ourselves a entry right here. So if you were to have entered at the H4 open close, H1 open close, you would have been stopped out. It's 36 pips drawdown. But if you were to have entered up in here, you would not have been stopped out, just a 28 pip drawdown, and your stop loss would be up here. I actually entered, this is full transparency by the way, because I don't care what you guys think about me. I entered one over here and I entered another over here. My bottom one got completely stopped out. Full transparency. I don't care. That's what happens. This is trading, right? So yeah, just want to tell you guys that. If you entered over here, you're not wrong whatsoever. So yeah, that's your entry, man. Hope you guys took something away from this, and I hope you guys understood this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys have a great day. See you guys in the next one, man. Peace out.